Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Good morning everyone, another beautiful day. I'm on my way to work and I thought I'd take a few minutes to chat it up with you guys for a little bit. But before I start, ladies and gentlemen, if you like to share my videos, those that like it, you know, the few of you that give it a like or a thumbs up, if you wouldn't mind sharing it with someone else. It seems that YouTube doesn't really like recommending my videos very much, and that's all right. So I rely on those of you that do like them and do think that they're appropriate to share with someone else to do so. So I appreciate it if you did that. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you for spending a few minutes today with me on my way to work. I wanted to talk about something really quick that I was thinking about. And many of you probably already know this, but I'm sure that many of you don't. I really like numbers. I like studying cycles. And I actually went to college to get a degree in mathematics, but once I got to calculus 2, I was like, yeah, I don't think this is gonna work out for me. So I joined the army. So I was thinking about this, ladies and gentlemen. There's a saying that goes like this: strong men create good times. Good times create complacency. Complacency creates weak men. And weak men create hard times. And then hard times create strong men. And then it starts all over again. And I'm looking at our history and where we're at in our history. And I'll let you all decide, where do you think we are at in that cycle? There's also another cycle chart. It's different than this one. I think it's called the Kepler's cycle or something like that. Don't quote me. It's probably the wrong name that I use. But it's a cycle about societal change. And it starts out with the best of the best. Like, times are really good, and we have like a government that is there for the people and by the people, that protects everyone's rights and doesn't take sides. And then democracy takes over, where 51% of the people get to decide what the other 49% of the people can or cannot do within the boundaries of the law. And then once that cycle ends, then a cycle where everyone is equal and everyone is treated exactly the same as far as being provided a living ensues. However, with that comes a price. With that care that you're being provided comes a price, and the price is oppression. So during that part of the cycle, the people are oppressed, although they have what they need to sustain life. Then the next part of the cycle comes, where not only are the people oppressed, but the government or the governance party of that part of the cycle decides what can and can't be produced, who will produce it. They'll decide what you can and cannot do as a profession. For example, maybe they'll give you some kind of an IQ test or something, and they will say, well, you're really good at this, so you're going to be a doctor. And they decide what you get paid, and they decide where you live, and they can even take it as far as deciding on whether they will allow you to have children or not, or even get married or not, and things like that. And then the next part of that cycle is where the people start getting ticked off that they don't have any freedoms whatsoever. So they started out free, and then as the cycle drew on, and I'm not talking about like a one generational cycle, I'm talking about multi-generational, right? So as the cycle drew on, they went from freedom to pure oppression and dictatorship, where everything they did was governed by a central party. So the next part of the cycle is where they start getting ticked off at that system. and they start doing things to try to get away from that system, and eventually it leads to some type of a revolt where they in turn get rid of the current system that's part of that cycle, and then they start a brand new system all over again where freedom ensues and everyone is free to do what they want as long as they don't hurt someone else. And if they did, then that society would take care of the person that is doing the wrongdoing. If you guys understand what I mean. I know I'm not very articulate in my words, but I hope you understand what I mean. So what part of that cycle do you think we're at? I mean, there's a whole bunch of different cycles. What part of that cycle do you think we're at? As far as hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times, and then it starts all over again. That's something that I like you to think about, because I think it's a very useful tool in preparedness. How long do you think the cycle will last? In either case, either the societal cycle, where society gets fed up with their governance party or their governance structure, or in the other cycle where hard men create good times. Because I personally think that we are at the latter part of each of those cycles. In the first one, right now, believe it or not, we have been living good times for the last generation or two. I mean, like really good times. But before we could get to live those good times, it took a lot of hard man. And when I say man, I mean everyone. I don't just mean the male gender. I mean everyone, right? Man, M-A-N. It took a lot of hard man to create those good times. But we've been enjoying those good times for so long that eventually the cycle has to repeat. We are part of nature. Nature revolves throughout a cycle. I had this conversation with my brother not too long ago, and he said, this is going to happen because of this and this and that. I said, listen, the way I see it is, we are part of nature. Everything in nature is a cycle. For example, you have 4 seasons, unless you live in Alaska. But you have 4 seasons, right? It happens every year. You go through winter, you go through spring, summer, fall. Then it happens again. I believe that nature is just as winter, spring, summer, and fall is. You have bad times, you have good times, you have mediocre times, then you go back to having bad times and good times, etc. So I believe we're almost at the end of that cycle where we are enjoying the fruits of the hard man that came before us. And that is why we need to prepare for the hard times that will come ahead of us. And if for any reason, prepare not only for ourselves, but for our children. That way they can have an opportunity to enjoy the next cycles that are ahead of them in their lives. So I really want to know what you guys think about that. And let me know, or let us all know, what have you done this week to get just a little bit more prepared? All right, ladies and gentlemen, look around. Look around, whether you believe in cycles or not. Look around and see what's going on in the world. You know, I follow lots of cycles. Like, for example, there is a cycle that predicts societal breakdown, or societal infractions or fractions, if you want to call it that, where the society breaks and fractures and becomes something worse than what it is. And that cycle is around a 60-year cycle. So if you ask yourselves, what was happening around 60 years ago? And you can look back and see what was happening and compare it to what's happening today. It's very interesting how it lines up. And then there's a business cycle, which is usually about 8 or so years. And about every 8 or so years, we have something go a little bonkers within the economy. And then there's a macro business cycle that's about every 80 or so years. When I say every 80 or so, when I say or so, you can add or subtract a few years. It's not 100% exactly every 80 years. So there's a business cycle or a macro business cycle, which lasts about every 80 or so years. And then there's also a climatic cycle, which starts with every 11 or so years due to the minimums and maximums. And then it goes to every 120 or 240 years, which is your grands, your grand minimums, your grand maximums, your warm periods, your cold periods. It's all a cycle, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're not a studier of cycles, take a look at it and see what you can look back at to compare to what's happening now. Not only in our society, like societal breakdown and things like that, but everything, the weather, business, finance, the economy, all those things, ladies and gentlemen. We are all humans and we all live in a cycle. At least that's my opinion. All right, that's my little 2 cents, 2 Alaska Prepper cents for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining in. I appreciate your guys' time, and I truly do appreciate you spending a little bit of your life with me. Having said that, remember to be good to each other. When good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place, and you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to all of you and your families. This is Alaska Prepper, and I am out.